Okay. Hello and welcome to Eastern Horizon. And in today's episode, I have joined by a very high-profile panel uh, on the meeting between the Donald Trump and between Vladimir Putin. So I have, let me introduce to my panel. So I have joined by Robert English. He is the associate professor of the International Relations, Slavic Language and Literature, University of the Southern California. Thank you very much, Robert English. And I have joined from Germany, Dr. Ulrich Brückner. He is the Jeans Monnet Professor of the European Studies at Stanford University in Berlin, Germany. The third panel that will join us from Moscow, Russia, Mr. Andrey Kortunov. He is the Director General, former Director General and academic director of the Russia International Affairs Councils. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, let me go to Robert English. That how you see that the meeting that is going to take place between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, and especially I am asking a question about the venue. Alaska. Why the both leaders and the both countries has chosen Alaska as a venue for this mega event?
The second question is the easiest one. I think it was just convenience. As you noted earlier, it's the two countries come together across the Bering Strait, right nearby. It's a short hop from Vladivostok, the Russian side, the Asian side, and they're going to meet at this military base, what we call JBER, Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, which is a large Air Force base. So it has the facilities, the runways, the security. It's been used for hastily organized summit meetings of this sort in the past, although perhaps not quite of this high profile. So I can't think of any other reason, just convenience. As for what we expect to come out of it, well, let me just start the conversation by saying I've become cautiously optimistic after months of pessimism, even recent weeks of pessimism, because we see signs of some movement and some flexibility, both from Kiev and from Moscow, about possible compromises. They still seem to be far apart, but there is now talk from Kiev that they could accept, at least in the interim, a deal, a ceasefire that leaves all this territory in Russian hands, and they'll deal on other particulars, and on the Russian side as well, that they can moderate some of their most extreme demands. So does that mean a final deal? No. It might not even be a full ceasefire, but under the pressure of Trump, who is under some pressure to deliver on his promise, I think that at least a symbolic first step towards a full ceasefire that might include, for example, a halt to long-range airstrikes on each other. And it might also include just a framework, a beginning outline of the larger territorial trade-off. We might hope to see something like that. And that would be enough for Trump to claim a victory and that they've taken a big step towards peace.
Okay, Dr. Ulrich, so how you see that Alaska being a venue? Because there is something like, is there anything special in choosing this venue to be the meeting point for both the leaders?
Well, I would disagree a bit with what Robert said about Alaska being convenient. When you look at how many time zones Putin has to cross to finally arrive there, it would have been way more convenient to meet like back in the days Gorbachev meets Reagan in Iceland, or what would have sent the very wrong signal to meet in Greenland, which according to previous news is something America urgently needs. So from that perspective, I think the signal was more, we don't meet in Europe because that upgrades Europe or gives Europe a say, and we rather stay either on the one side or the other side of the two superpowers that want to decide and the others have to follow.
So Vladimir Zelensky was on the visit to Europe, and then he went to the United Kingdom. So how you see that the European leaders are looking towards this meeting, and what are the European concerns on this meeting after anything that comes out? Dr. Ulrich.
Well, the concerns are very high, but we also have to put this in context where we come from. Before the Munich Security Conference in February, everyone was convinced that the United States stands on the side of the West, and the West is intact, and collective security is real, and deterrence is real. And then we learned the hard way that some of us might not be worth being defended. And so this led to a situation in which it was talked over the Europeans. And now having a virtual meeting yesterday in which the Europeans could brief Trump, if that's even possible, is a major improvement compared with the situation before. The same could be said for the personal relationship between Zelensky and Trump. But this is all speculation and a very temporary, impressive view. We don't know what's happening tomorrow, and anyone who would claim to know what this would lead to doesn't know, including the ones who meet tomorrow.
Can I jump in?
Professor Robert English here. So let me come to you, and my questions to you is this: that mean that how the Americans are expected, and mean that what could be the outcome of this meeting that the Americans are expecting from this meeting, and mean that what is on stake from the American side in this meeting?
Let me answer in a broader context and following on what Ulrich said, that this is, about the uncertainty and about those who predict or speculate really don't know, because this is being conducted in an absolutely unprecedented way. Maybe Trump is normalizing this kind of statesmanship, but it really isn't normal. And to have a high-stakes meeting aimed at ending a long-standing war without the kinds of preparation at the working level, at the ministerial level, when we usually have an outline agreement and the two sides have settled some of the biggest issues, and then the heads of state come together to hammer out the final accord. And so there's some predictability, and you can see the foundation building towards a solution. Here, it's all improvised. Instead of quiet diplomacy, they're tweeting in public. The presidents themselves and their staffs, there are leaks everywhere. There are hints. So it's confusing and frankly unprofessional. And the Trump team, Trump himself, again, this is my speculation, but based on some track record, is that he believes he can come in and deal like he's dealing on New York real estate, right? He has some carrots and sticks, right? And he can offer maybe a minerals deal. And he's looking for investments in this or that industry. So he can sweeten the deal with these kinds of carrots, and then he can also pressure and threaten and bluster. And with all of that, rely on his personal persuasiveness, magnetism, charisma to carry the day and create something out of nothing, to create an agreement where we just have tons of moving pieces and confusion. So I'm just really following up on Ulrich's point that this is unprecedented and makes speculation very difficult. As far as Americans, that's the other side of this. We don't have a normal foreign policy process anymore, right? Normally, we would have had Senate leaders brought in and briefed and giving their opinions, the House Armed Services, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the leaders of those would have been involved talking with, the State Department and preparing, because eventually any treaty or big agreement will have to go through some kind of confirmation process. Here, they all stay quiet, Democrat and Republican, and they allow the president to just freelance. So I can't tell you on the American side because we're waiting for, the dear leader to decide and to make it happen.
Okay. So let me go to Professor Andrey Kortunov. Thank you very much, Professor Andrey Kortunov. Welcome to Eastern Horizon.
Thank you.
Thank you. So how you see that this big meeting that is going to take place between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin? So how Moscow could see this meeting, and what is your expectation from this meeting?
Well, I think that for many experts here, the name of the game is expectation management. They understand that you cannot prepare a full-fledged summit meeting in just 1 week. And we know that there was no preparation underway until Steve Witkoff came to Moscow in early August. So it is a kind of ad hoc meeting, though the composition of the Russian delegation suggests that they want to discuss a broad range of issues, not limited only to the Ukrainian settlement. They have people who are authorized to talk about strategic arms control and also about economic and financial cooperation between the United States and Russia. So I think that the Russian side will try to demonstrate that though the Ukrainian conflict is very important and remains central to relations between Russia and the United States, it is not the only game in town, and we have some other issues to discuss and maybe even to start working on. But definitely on Ukraine, there is still, I think, a gap, a significant gap between the official Russian position and that of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is focused primarily on the ceasefire. For him to stop the fighting is already a major political victory. He would demonstrate that he could do something that no one else could do. But Putin emphasized more than once that he is concerned about what he believes to be the root causes of the conflict. So he says that if we limit ourselves to ceasefire only, it might escalate again. And actually, we had this negative experience already. So let us also discuss more general issues related to this conflict, including the NATO enlargement and arms control in Europe and the future European architecture. I'm not sure that Donald Trump is particularly interested in all this agenda, and I'm not sure that they will discuss this broader agenda in any detail in Alaska. But at least there is a chance that the gap in the perceptions between the Kremlin and the White House might be bridged or narrowed, and the meeting in Alaska will become a starting point for a more intense dialogue at various levels. That would already be quite an accomplishment, of course.
So let me go to the Dr. Ulrich. So Dr. Ulrich, how you see that the expected outcome of this meeting, and then my another question is that the mines and mineral deal that Donald Trump proposed, how Europeans see this mines and mineral deals, Dr. Ulrich.
Well, as everyone agreed already, this is more about a short-term success story to be presented in a press conference and not anything that could end the conflict or address questions that Trump is neither interested in nor is he informed about. What is the background? What has been the beginning of the conflict? What counts as the beginning? Like, all of this is not his interest. And even if he looks at maps, he is still the real estate broker who informs the journalist that everything with a sea view has the highest quality and is most expensive, as if this is what the war is about. So in Europe, not too many people expect that there is a very practical outcome, maybe something to present in the media. And Trump already said that if it's successful, and successful is probably the atmosphere, if Putin behaves friendly and offers something that can be presented as a story, then this is as much as one can expect from this meeting. But a ceasefire and a peace solution that is backed by security guarantees is something fundamentally different. And especially when we think about security architecture in Europe, we are far from even putting the sketch of what that could imply on the table.
So let me go to Professor Robert English. Professor Robert English, so if there is some breakthrough in this meeting, so as you mentioned that there is some possibilities that Donald Trump want to tell the American people that there is some positive development. So where the Ukrainian people stand in that case, mean that the territorial disputes and the overall mean that this long war? Where you stand, the Ukraine and the people of Ukraine?
You know, there's so many ways to answer that and so many important parts because you're asking about the entire society, public opinion. I'll just point to recent survey, public opinion polling data that showed a significant shift in Ukraine. Whereas a couple of years ago, 3/4 of respondents said they wanted to fight on all the way to victory. No compromise, no negotiations. Now it's flipped almost entirely. As many as 70% say they want an immediate ceasefire, negotiations. They're willing to concede territory. They don't know exactly what territory. And when they hear about Putin's demands, that's too much. But they seem amenable to what we're calling the EU option, which was freeze the conflict where it is now, revisit the status of those territories. This would be a de facto, not a de jure agreement. But halt the killing and start working on a peace framework, start working on all the associated reconstruction, the financial side. They're desperate, right? They're really being pounded. And you know, when we look at the sort of military picture, the socio-political side of the war, right? This is a war of attrition. And the West, the Europeans, you know, when the previous Secretary General of NATO, the previous leadership in the United States were constantly expressing confidence that we can outlast Putin. The West is stronger, right? Our combined economies dwarf Russia's. And we're so advanced technologically. And it's difficult to accept that in terms of public support, which is critical, right? The long-range drone strikes and missile strikes on each other, the phase the war is in now, has seemingly only strengthened public opinion in Russia behind President Putin and against Ukraine, whereas it's doing the opposite in Ukraine. It's weakening. So unfortunately, if we want to think in terms, these sort of superficial terms of who could outlast whom, Russia has outlasted Ukraine and the West. And the point now for your question is the Ukrainian people seem to be showing flexibility, interest, whether out of desperation or just common sense, in a compromise where they weren't before. So it's no longer true to say that if Zelensky agrees even to temporary ceding of territory, he'll be thrown out. He'll be overthrown by the nationalists, that the people will rise up. It's not true. He's almost more hardline than they are at this point, although it's shifting, and I hesitate to read too much into one comprehensive poll, but it's suggestive.
So let me go to the Professor Andrey Kortunov. So Professor Andrey Kortunov, how you see that in case of any positive developments, so where you see Ukraine and the people of Ukraine and overall the territorial mean that the tension or the problem, where you see it?
Well, I think that, and that has already been mentioned, that there'll be a difference between the acceptance of the situation on the ground as it is and recognition of changes in territories. It is very hard to believe that these territorial changes will be recognized by the majority of the international community. At the same time, I think it's fair to say that at least a significant part of territories that are now under Russia's control will stay under Russia's control. And I think that this is something that is likely to be with us for a long time. In fact, you know, if you look at the contemporary world, you'll see many issues where territorial boundaries are not clearly defined. You look at Israel, and there is ambiguity about Israeli borders. Some people recognize territorial acquisitions of Israel over a recent couple of decades, some do not. Look at India and Kashmir, how you draw the border between India and Pakistan in Kashmir, Kosovo. So there are many cases when we have to live for a long time in a situation of ambiguity, and without a clear answer to whom a particular territory belongs. So I'm afraid that it might be the case in this particular conflict. Hopefully, it will not prevent the post-conflict reconstruction of the damaged territories. Hopefully, it will not prevent people to go back to where they lived before the conflict. But legally speaking, I think that we're likely to stay in a limbo, at least for some time.
Dr. Ulrich, the same question to you, that how you see that this territorial matters after this meeting, and what is the European point of view on this? How you see that?
Well, as Robert said before, the situation in 22 is a very different one compared with right now. Russia has militarily the upper hand, and therefore Putin has no reasons to stop because he can present success stories on the ground. Well, when we look at the economic situation, things don't look that promising to keep on going like this if Russia is running out of reserves, if the oil price makes it extremely complicated to refinance everything, and if the increasing pressure with secondary sanctions and the costs of the shadow fleet make it also very expensive to keep on going like this. And every military power that cut military expenditure at this point of the conflict paid a very high price. So the situation at this point doesn't really show in what direction we are heading. So maybe both sides have a reason to take a breath and stop the killing, but this is still far from a lasting solution, not to speak of something like a stable European security architecture.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I really appreciate your insight on this. I have joined by Andrey Kortunov from Moscow, Russia. I had joined by Robert English from University of the Southern California, and Dr. Ulrich Brückner, European Studies at Stanford University in Berlin. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Really appreciate your insight.
Thanks for having me.